Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV for the second part of mine and Laura Jane Dodd's conversation with the mighty C. Robert Cargill, the author of Sea of Rust, the author of Day Zero, both of which are available from Forbidden Planet in the links attached to this conversation, and also the screenwriter of many interesting flicks, including one of my all-time favorite Marvel movies, Doctor Strange, which we're about to talk about now. Enjoy. I've got two favorite MCU movies, and one of them is, of course, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and the other one is Doctor Strange. Such an amazing job that you guys did with that movie. And to really capture the Ditko of it all was the thing that blew me away, because, I think to exist as an MCU movie, but also to have it feel, so authentically dark dimension and whatnot at the same time. How complex a process was that to deliver that massive movie that ticks so many boxes?
It was incredibly difficult, and
I'm sure it was.
No, I mean the thing is that Marvel has teams of incredibly brilliant people working on every department. And so it's always working with geniuses. It's always working with people on top of their field. It was very weird while we were making the film, halfway through, the Oscar nominations were dropped. And there was a weird moment where a couple of people around me who were all crew members were going around congratulating each other on their Oscar nominations. So not only were we working with all these Oscar nominated and Oscar award winning actors, but like the people doing our visual effects and the people doing our sound editing and the people doing this stuff were all getting nominated for their other work. This was the level that you're working with, but there's no filmmaking quite like Marvel filmmaking, because you do have these great teams where I will, like when I was working on the script, I would write a fight scene, but I would write, typical fight scene stuff. And then the stunt team would take that script and they would go and block out an actual fight scene that kind of imagined what, realized what I had written on the page. And then they would bring us these videos of these well-edited, cool fight scenes, like, what about this? And then Scott would literally go and be able to direct and go, no, on this shot. Oh, I like this. Oh, can we get more of that? And so it really was a true development process. The stunt team had come up with this really cool idea of like, what if we're having a fight? This fight is taking place in the relic room. What if the cloak, what if that came to life and actually started fighting with alongside Strange? And they showed us a mock-up of it, and Scott fell in love with it, and he's like, all right, well, now you got to make that work. And then it was, how do you make the cloak now work in the story and make it feel native and natural? And so there was a lot of times where just people would bring these brilliant ideas, and I had to find ways to incorporate it to where it felt like it was on the page from day one. And that was the really tough part, is there were so many things like that. But when you have geniuses bringing you these great moments, these great bits, it's a joy to try to figure out and get it how to work. And it's a challenge, but it's a delightful challenge. So it was the hardest process I've gone through creatively of my life, but it was worth every tough minute.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to hear your very gracious response, and fascinating to listen to. I guess my parting shot to you would be that I think the thing with the MCU, it's very easy because of that process for it to feel quite homogenized sometimes. As much as I love every single Marvel movie because I'm such a fan, but I think Strange is one of those movies that has a real voice in it as well, and that's I'm certain that's down to you guys. So just such a great job, mate. Such a pleasure. Yeah, to be able to have your unique voice within that machine, I think, is an amazing thing.
I mean, one of the joy moments of my life where I just kind of overflowed with joy was watching Infinity War, and seeing how I had created the idea that the Ancient One could look into the multiple futures to see, but could not see past this wall of her own death. and to see them borrow that and utilize that in Infinity War, and to see like, oh, that exists because I put it there.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Is just so, yeah, to have left my, and there's a couple of other just lines I've written, bits that I wrote that I came up with and brainstormed, that has ended up getting out into the rest of the MCU, being able to, I love the MCU before I got, into it. Like, I remember watching Winter Soldier of all things, and sitting there, and when they get to that scene where they mention Doctor Strange, I was like, oh, and my wife just looks at me and she goes, what? And I'm like, they're gonna make a Doctor Strange movie, and having no idea. And sure enough, when I went to see Endgame, I had this weird emotional moment that I realized I was in the same theater, in the same seat, watching Infinity War, watching echoes of my own work in there, in the same exact place that I had first learned that they were even going to make a Doctor Strange movie. And so to be able to take a part of that, be a part of that, to be woven, even if it's just a few threads woven into the fabric of the MCU, is a great point of pride, and I'm just so happy to have been able to participate.
Oh mate, that's fucking awesome! It's an ancient one, multiple timeline moment of your own right. That's incredible. Let's we're racing towards the end of our time together, but let's loop back onto your novel, and do you want to close us out with some more writing related questions, Laura?
Yeah, of course. So I have to say, Brittle from Sea of Rust was one of my absolute favourite characters. So what comes first for you, the character or the world? And was it a conscious decision to make Brittle identify as female?
Okay, yes. First things first, I'll answer the end first. Yes, that was a very conscious decision. It was a conscious decision to keep that from the audience for the first several chapters. The idea being that I knew that the assumption would be that it is a robot and I am a male writer, so it was going to be a male character. So the moment someone identifies her as a she, all of a sudden, that just kind of snaps the audience to a point that they're like, oh, wait a second, and realizes they don't know as much as they know about these robots, but also was able to make a point about gender and gender identity, and then could lead me to talk about that later in the book. So yeah, that was a very conscious decision. And then in terms of where do I start, I start with a story. I come up with a story first because I'm always looking for the best story. And then I ask myself, who's the most interesting character that could inhabit this story? What would tell this story properly, but also be an incredibly interesting character on their own? And then I go through the process of figuring out how to make that organic to where you can't tell where I started. To where you feel like I could have come up with Brittle and then come up with the adventure after the fact. And making sure that you just can't tell because they both are indivisible from one another, that you can't just take Brittle out and still get the story of Sea of Rust. And you can't imagine Brittle ending up in any other story like this without going through that process.
Just absolutely wonderful. Andrew, you need to read Sea of Rust.
Do you know what? I'm 100% going to do that now that we've had that conversation. And on that note of my reading list for the future, I just want to say thanks so much to C. Robert Cargill for joining us to talk about his novels Sea of Rust and Day Zero, both of which you can order from the links attached to this conversation. And thanks so much for carving out the time to join us today, mate.
Oh, absolutely. You guys have been so kind to me in the past and hosted me signing in the past, and I'm just sad I can't do it for this one. So thank you for having me.
So we'll host you again, though, mate. As soon as international travel's all over the place, we'd love to see you again.
Absolutely.
You take care, mate. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember, everybody, you can buy the books from the links attached to this conversation. Thanks again, Cargill. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah,
likewise. Thank you, guys.
Take care. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.